Well, in the infamous words of our guest tonight, TikTok time to rock, we got David Wood in the house. There has been some controversy going on over the last few weeks with David and some Muslim folks, and so he's going to talk about that. I hope you had a chance to check out the video with David that he put on our channel this week. Bobby got to talk to him about eating the Quran. Should Christians eat the Quran? If you haven't seen that video after you watch this live stream, I would challenge you to go check out that video. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the doctors, Dr. Bobby Conway and Dr. David Wood. Guys, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Tim. I don't know what's going on, but I'm hearing your feedback through your computer. There's a delay. David, are you hearing all that going down?
Yes, I am, Bobby.
Bobby, your TV's on behind you. So that might be it.
That could be it.
Amateur move.
Oh man, can you believe that? That's hilarious. Well, I'm glad you caught that. What's up, D Wood? We got the Dizzle in the house.
Hello, Bobby.
I'm trying to figure out how to get my TV to turn off, so hold up.
Try the remote.
It's not working. There we go.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I'm glad to have David Wood, my good buddy and friend on, who is doing just such amazing work in apologetics, Acts 17 apologetics. He just recently broke through the 500,000 mark of YouTube subscribers. And David, you're definitely having a massive impact in the world of YouTube. And we all just appreciate the work that you're doing there. And you're such an unlikely candidate to be being used in the way that you are, right? But God is using you.
Indeed, sir.
Indeed.
The world's first psychopathic.
Hat, bro? Yeah, the first psychopathic.
First psychopathic Koran artist.
The first psychopathic Koran artist. That's right. So,
and I see Tim's internet connection. I see Tim's internet connection is making me a Picasso. Why is it working with yours?
Well, maybe it's not my internet connection. It might be something else.
I assure you, it is not mine. I pay much money, because I make fat stacks from my works of art.
Yeah, and Tim, just so you know, comments aren't coming up on my side, as you mentioned. So I just wanted you to be aware of that as well.
You have to hit the little button on the upper right-hand corner there, and the window will slide out.
There we go. Got it. All right. Well, David, you are looking so artistic today. Be gentle now to the artist's feelings. Did so love, had to say. Let's talk about your hat. Dizzle, what's up with it?
I'm an artist. This is what artists wear. If you look up artist's hat, this is what pops up.
Yeah. Did you wear that while you were in prison? Is that one of your kind of like archives that you've held from your time behind the bars?
I was a little too busy fighting every day of my life just to survive to be thinking about wearing hats.
Yeah, I don't think your inmates would have enjoyed your, I'm colorblind, but I'm going to venture to say red beret hat.
Wow, you nailed that one.
Yeah, you like that? Pretty good for the blind mark there. Well, David, hey, last week it was fun. We released a video that you did when you came down to visit me in North Carolina on is it okay for Christians to eat the Quran? That's had over 30,000 views on our channel. And I think it's, incredible how much people are paying attention to what's going on in the world of Islam and how God is using you. And your ways and methods are unconventional, no doubt, and it raises some red flags for some. Recently, you've been in a bit of Japanese art that you've been creating and putting art up as it relates to creating paper pigs out of the Quran and posting it on eBay, and then these numbers getting up to astronomical highs and then eBay pulling it down. What's the latest in the narrative? And tell the audience, if you could, why is it that you're taking pages of the Quran and using Japanese art and eBaying it? What was your motivation behind that?
Well, Bobby, I'm going to fill you in on a little background here. No one knows this. No one knows this except me and my wife. You're the first one to hear this. Being serious here, but I know my secret is safe with you. I've mentioned in giving my testimony, sharing my testimony, and so on, that when you grow up as a psychopath, you kind of spend the first part of your life learning to blend in, learning to do what other people are doing, imitating other people. But then you reach a certain age in your teens where you're thinking, why am I imitating these people, right? You become a kind of like narcissist and thinking, why am I living by the same rules? Why am I making myself live by the same rules that everyone else is living by? And then you end up doing horrible, messed up things because you start thinking to yourself, well, I'm not supposed to kill. Why? Because this person said it. Why should I listen to this person? And so on. And so you end up feeling like you've been polluted or corrupted by other people. And you start trying to strip all of that stuff away to get to the real you, the true you that has been uncorrupted by the rest of the world. So
the artistic you.
Yeah. So you have the first part of your life, and that's learning to blend in. And then you have the next part of your life, which is breaking free from all of that. Then I became a Christian. And then as a Christian, I actually believe in a moral standard. I believe that Jesus is Lord. I believe that we have to, strive to imitate Christ and so on. But you also start kind of doing things that you just see other Christians doing. You know what I mean? You're not getting them from Jesus. You're not getting them from the Bible. You're just sort of picking up as you go along how a Christian apologist, let's say, is supposed to do things. Well, what do? You look to the Christian apologists that you like. Right? You look to the Christian apologist that you like and say, hey, I want to do things the way this Christian apologist does. Right? And so after becoming a Christian and then deciding to be a Christian apologist, you spend your time sort of imitating other people and so on. But then once again, you get to a point where you're thinking to yourself, this isn't really me. It's kind of not the real me. Yes, I still believe Jesus is Lord. Yes, I have to imitate Christ, but there's all this other stuff that I kind of picked up along the way that I'm living by, that I didn't get from Christ. I didn't get it from the Bible. It's just, this is how Christians do things. And so now I'm kind of at the point in life where, why am I doing that? It's not the real me. We have to get down to the real core. And at my core, I'm an artist.
Oh man, David. Well, I'm so sorry to laugh on your artistic look. I think you look great. It's really fitting, the red beret. Kind of goes with the slip. You just need to put on the slip that you've worn in past videos. It really kind of create a great combo look,
Bobby, that is such a 2012 thing of you to say.
All right, artist. So do you have a new name? Like, as you've kind of come into your identity, do we have a new name? Do you want to be referred? I mean, you've called yourself the Dizzle for so long. I mean, is it time for something new, something bold, something more in line with your new fresh identity and your understanding of your new revealed self?
No, the Dizzle has always been the artist. At the end of the day, when you think of what is the real you, I seem to be some sort of strange collection of alter egos that are created for specific purposes. Yeah. And when it comes to making artwork out of the Quran, well, that is just the work of the Dizzle. Understand?
Yeah. So
Because
the
I'm spitting
Dizzle,
some knowledge. I'm spitting some knowledge to you right now, Bobby.
so why does the Dizzle choose the Quran as sort of a place to begin Japanese, what do you call it, origami art?
Yes, well, this was kind of a warning across the bow. So this went back, and we talked about this in the video. Basically, you have a number. I've focused on a few particular individuals, but you have a number of Muslim apologists, Muslim dawagandists, and so on, who are getting really desperate because Islam is bleeding left and right. People are leaving Islam like it's a sport. If you go back to the time when McDowell converted, it was pretty rare to hear about someone leaving Islam. It happened, but the people who did leave Islam usually weren't very vocal about it. And so you just rarely heard from ex-Muslims, whereas now you hear from ex-Muslims every day. So it's snowballing. It's snowballing. And you even have Muslim apologists warning about this impending avalanche of apostasy. In other words, if you go back 12, 13, 14, 15 years ago, it was a common mantra among Muslims to say, no one leaves Islam. It's totally ridiculous. I mean, Abu Bakr, the first of the rightly guided caliphs, had to fight what are called the apostate wars. He had to fight wars against all the people who were trying to leave Islam. You've had tons of apostates over the centuries. You have tons of apostates around the world now. But because Islam does such a great job at intimidating ex-Muslims into a state of silence, it actually allowed them to propagate this myth. Oh, no one leaves Islam. No one ever leaves Islam. Now, there are so many ex-Muslims, not just ex-Muslims who leave Islam and then don't think twice about it and go on and live their lives, but ex-Muslims who are actively opposing and exposing Islam. You have those kinds of Muslims, and at the same time, you have all of these other myths that are being shattered, absolutely shattered. So for decades in the West, one of the most popular arguments for Islam is what I call the argument from perfect preservation. The Quran has been perfectly preserved right down to the letter from the time it was revealed to Muhammad. Now, that's been completely exposed as a total fabrication. Lots of Muslims still believe it because it still takes time for this information to trickle down to them, but it's only a matter of time. The information is getting out there. You have Arabic speakers putting up multiple different versions of the Quran on the same screen, showing the differences in the Arabic to expose this just complete lie. And so what you have is the complete breakdown of Islamic apologetics. It's completely breaking down as fast as they can come up with new lies. The lies are being exposed by tons of Christian apologists, ex-Muslims, atheists. Everyone's just exposing this left and right. And so if you're a Muslim apologist, you're looking at this going, wow, just 10 years ago, things were looking really good. And now it's an epic dumpster fire. What are things going to be like 5 or 10 years from now? And so what you have is a bunch of Muslim apologists who are saying, we can't keep going the way we've been going because we see where this is leading. This is leading to, again, what Muslim apologists are calling the avalanche of apostasy that's coming. So they're terrified, they're losing their cool. And so they're trying to get crafty with new ways of doing things. They're trying to come up with new ways of doing things. In other words, they're trying to get creative. And so they're doxing people, they're threatening people, they're threatening ex-Muslims, they're heaping abuse and insults, not just on the people who are criticizing Islam, but going after their family members, targeting their family members. So they're trying all of these different approaches. And I'm about to post a video with Zakir Naik, where Zakir Naik, who's the most popular Muslim apologist in the world, he's actually encouraging Muslims to keep databases of information on critics of Islam, so that the moment we're traveling and we end up going into a Muslim country, we can be arrested and thrown in jail. And so, I mean, this is not some random fringe guy. I mean, can you imagine a Christian saying, hey, anyone who's criticizing Islam, we need to keep documents of information on them so that as soon as they enter a Christian country, we can lock them up and then charge them for things they did in the non-Christian country. That would sound absolutely insane to us. This is the top Muslim apologist in the world who's advocating this. So basically, they're trying to get creative. They're trying to get, dare I say, artistic in their response. And so my message to them is, there's only one real artist in this discussion, and it ain't you guys. And I'll show you by using your Quran.
Yeah, well, you have definitely done that, and that is something that many people would look at and go, "Come on, David, your methodology here seems harsh. It seems a little bit, unchristian-like, unfashionable."
Did you say unfashionable? Do I look unfashionable, Bobby?
I think you look hideous at the moment, but in a good kind of way. I love you, David. But I got to tell you, man, the red hat is, it's interesting. It's an interesting look on you for sure. You ought to get some yellow. You ought to do your beard like yellow to really bring out the artistic look, like a yellow beard, your black specs, and your red beret hat. I think it'd really bring your vibe together. But all that to say, David, you're right. There have been these threats that Muslims have put out against, apologist families and different people who are believers. And you have went back at them, and you've based that off of a verse in the Koran that you believe that gives you some ammunition to help kind of slow down the threat. So you're sort of playing their own game. And now you've got this idea of drilling the Quran. What's that all about? What are you going to do there?
Well, it's good to, the two birds with one stone type approach. If you can do multiple things with one task, then, well, that's kind of cool. So you take something like the Muslim apologists who are trying to silence people. And keep in mind, all of this, whether we're talking about Zakir Naik telling Muslims to keep databases of information in order to have people arrested if they travel into a Muslim country, whether it's Muhammad Hijab going after people's wives, whether it's Ali Dawa saying that when Islam takes over an area, ex-Muslims are going to be executed, whether it's Ijaz Ahmed doxing people, giving out their personal information and so on. All of this, it all has the exact same goal, right? It all has the exact same goal. In Christianity, if you become a Christian, Christianity has some rules. Those rules apply to you, right? Christianity doesn't say, oh, and by the way, you non-Christians, here's how you have to live. There have been Christians who did that, right? You've had Christian empires, Christian nations that imposed things on non-Christian people. But Christianity, that's not the ideology or the religion that does that. You're not commanded to do that. Whereas in Islam does not just have a set of rules for people who believe in Islam. It has a set of rules for the people who believe in Islam, and it has a set of rules for the people who don't believe in Islam. And the people who believe in Islam are supposed to force the people who don't believe in Islam to follow those rules that are made for them. That's easy to do in a Muslim country where in a place like Saudi Arabia or Pakistan, you can lock someone up for blasphemy. Oh, I see myself frozen on the screen. Do you still hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I can hear
You're
you
not frozen.
and see you moving.
Okay. So in a Muslim country, that's very easy to do. You can just lock people up. In a non-Muslim country, you have to get a little creative. How do you make people follow the rules that they're supposed to follow according to Islam when they don't believe in those things, and you can't enforce that on them? So how exactly do you do that? Well, there are all kinds of ways you can do that, but notice it's just amazing how successful they've been at this, right? Politicians, the media, educators, entertainers, these guys all walk on eggshells around the topic of Islam. No one cares if you're blasting away at Christianity, but things get very, very sensitive as soon as you're talking about Islam. Well, guess what? That's exactly how it's supposed to be according to Islam. You can blast away at anything, just not Islam. And then, and so in a Muslim country, you can blast away at all kinds of things, just not Islam. Here we are in non-Muslim countries, and we end up with almost the same thing. You can criticize Islam to some extent, but you're going to take some heat for it, right? You're going to be threatened by people who will threaten you over that sort of thing. But even from non-Muslims, you get labeled a racist, you get labeled a hate monger. Even if you're a Christian, you're blasting away at Islam because you're trying to help Muslims leave Islam. You get blasted by your fellow Christians. Oh, how can you be so hateful, criticizing Islam? And that's kind of what I'm talking about with, we absorb these ideas that we didn't get from the Bible. You didn't get this idea from Jesus. You didn't get this idea from the Bible. We kind of absorb the idea at some point. Hey, if you're blasting away at someone's ideology, it's because you hate that person. Where in the name of common sense did you get that? Well, you've basically been manipulated. You've been had. And so Islam is doing everything it can to make other people adhere to the rules that Islam has set for us. And I think at some point, you just have to say no. And you just have to say, no, I'm not following your rules. And so just to give you an example, Muhammad, once he conquered Mecca, once he had power over the pagans, Muhammad smashed the idols of the pagans of Mecca. So once he conquered Mecca, there were 360 idols at the Kaaba. Muhammad smashed them to pieces. Say what you want, but you can't say that's very respectful towards other people's religion. Somehow, if you tell a Muslim, hey, I'm going to drill a hole in your Quran. Oh, well, we would never do that with another person's religion. What are you saying? Are you saying you're better than your prophet? Your prophet had utter contempt for non-Muslim religions. He smashed people's idols. He didn't care. So on what basis are you condemning me? You can't condemn me on the basis of Islam. Well, I mean, you can say because you're doing something to the Quran, which we believe in, therefore you shouldn't do that. But yes, if it were not the Quran, then it would be fine. But that's not what they say. They say, oh, it's wrong. It's wrong to insult someone's religion. Absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Islam shows more contempt for non-Islamic religions than anyone else does. So you basically have all these situations, and with Muhammad Hijab and these other guys starting these new campaigns of doxing people, showering people's wives with abuse, plotting to have people arrested when they go into other countries. It seems to me there just comes a point where you say, no, you're not going to do that. I'm not going to follow that rule. I'm not going to follow your rules. And you're not going to be going after people's wives and so on. You're not going after families. You're not going to be doxing people. And you say, well, yes, but how do you stop them? And here's where Christians have a problem getting their minds around this, right? Because most Christians would say, yes, if a government wants to stop someone from waging a terrorist attack or something like that, the government can physically stop them. But apart from that, they think there's nothing you can do. You just preach the gospel, and that's all you're allowed to do. That's an idea. I don't know where you're getting this from. So just imagine a situation here. Let's suppose you're not a police officer, you're not an agent. Suppose someone's about to wage a terrorist attack, and he says, "Hey, I'm going to wage a terrorist attack unless you rip a page out of my book. And if you rip a page out of my book, then I won't launch the terrorist attack." It would take me less than a second to rip a page out of his book. Here's what's amazing. If I were to do that, I actually believe I would get criticized by Christians. I believe I would get even if I were stopping a terrorist attack by ripping a page out of the Quran. If I were stopping a terrorist attack, I'm convinced that I would get messages from Christians saying, that was so un-Christ-like what you did there. Like what? Stopping a terrorist attack? Yeah, but you insulted the person's religion. But yeah, because that's the way That's the way to get him to stop. He announced that to me. He said that to me. If you do that, then I'll stop. So that would be a situation. It's not a government. It's just, here's some behavior that is atrocious and you need to put a stop to it. And that person just gave you an option of how to do that. Well, you have that built into Islam. You have that built into the Quran itself. That is built into the Quran itself. There is a method. There's a method in the Quran, Surah 6, verse 108, where if someone is showering the unbelievers or their religion or something like that with insults and abuse, and you want the Muslim to stop with the insults and abuse, you can actually, according to the Quran, order him by threatening to insult Islam and Allah and Muhammad with abuse. And so that's according to the Quran. And the historical background is that the pagans of Mecca did not want to get into an insult battle. They were trying to live in peace and harmony, and it was Muhammad and his followers who were heaping insults on them. Well, they kept trying to negotiate. Hey, what can we do here to just stop with these stupid insults? Muhammad insisted on insulting their gods and goddesses. Well, they eventually got to the point where they said, we're so sick of this. Look, we're warning you now. We're giving you warning. Stop insulting our gods and goddesses, or we'll insult Allah and Muhammad. That's when the revelation came down. Surah 6, verse 108 says, in order to prevent them from insulting Allah and Muhammad, stop the insults, guys. So that's an order from Allah. And Muhammad and his companions, they stopped. They stopped, as hard as that was. Because keep in mind, this is the unbelievers ordering them to do something. It's the unbelievers saying, hey, we're ordering you to stop, or we're going to do this. That must have been hard, but they stopped. They stopped nonetheless. And so you can take this and look at this and say, well, what if we're not talking about a terrorist attack here. We're just talking about someone who's saying, hey, I'm going to insult your wives. I'm going to heap abuse on your family members. We're going to dox people. We're going to give out your home info so that you're always wondering what that knock at the door is. We're going to try and make you live in a state of fear, even in the West, even in places that aren't controlled by Islam. We're going to get you to be in a constant state of fear of Islam. Well, I don't believe they should be doing that, especially if there's a way that you can make them stop. And built into the Quran itself is a way to make them stop. It's, hey, you're going after people's wives. Hey, you're doxing. Hey, you're doing all this stuff. Guess what? You keep doing that stuff, I'm just going to rain down a fire of insults and abuse on your book. And I'm going to keep doing that until you just drop everything. Now, for people who have a problem with that, when Christians respond, David, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you sunk to that level. I don't even know what you're talking. What do you sunk to what level? Not saying the level of, hey, you don't get to go around starting this campaign of abuse and harassment of women. That's the level I've sunk to. That's the level you think I sunk to. But
yeah. So ultimately what you're trying to do, it doesn't look like it on the surface, but really you're after peace. You're trying to calm some of the storm down by matching strength with strength, so to speak, so that we can quit doing that nonsense and really get back to talking about why Christianity or why Islam, why one faith is more superior than the other. And so how much does being a psychopath help you with your methodology as it relates to trying to reach Muslims, David?
Yeah, well, here's the thing, and this is actually an important point. Lots of Christians aren't going to do something like drill a hole in the Quran because they're concerned about the feelings of Muslims, right? Because keep in mind, there are tons of Muslims who didn't do what Zakir Naik is suggesting, didn't dox anyone, didn't hurl insults at people's wives, didn't threaten to kill apostates. There are tons of Muslims who didn't do any of this, right? So why am I going to drill a hole in the Quran or eat the Quran or fold up the Quran into, make some Quranagami? Why am I going to do that when that's going to offend those nice Muslims who aren't doing these awful things? So that's what people are lots of people are thinking. They're influenced by, the feelings and so on. And guess what? The Muslims who do these things, so the Zakir Naiks, the Ijaz Ahmeds, the Ali Dawas, the Muhammad Hijabs, these kinds of people who are doing all sorts of horrible, horrible things, they take advantage of the nice Muslims that the rest of us want to get along with, right? They use them as a shield. And what they do is, so in other words, they do something like this. Hey, in order to stop critics of Islam from criticizing Islam, in order to force them into a state of silence and submission, I'm going to go after their family members, heap abuse on their family members, threaten to rape and torture their family members. And that's going to force them to be silent. And if these guys were at all worried, well, what if the non-Muslims or the critics of Islam simply get more aggressive and go after my religion? They're thinking, no, they're not going to do that because they're trying to get along with all the nice, peaceful Muslims. So the nice, peaceful Muslims that these critics of Islam want to get along with, these nice, peaceful Muslims are our shield against these guys responding in a way that would actually make us stop. Right? That's what they think. Well, it's fortunate for me because if I don't, I can pay attention to people's feelings and say, okay, well, I'm going to try to get along with this person. But at the end of the day, if you're just being used by other people and so on, I really don't care about your feelings. I just don't. I don't. I will drill a hole in your book all day long. If you got a problem with it, guess what? You got a problem with your own prophet. He smashed people's idols. Your book, this book here, calls Jews and Christians the worst of all creatures. Why should I respect this? This book calls for the violent subjugation of the entire world. This book says that you can beat your rebellious wives into submission. This book says that you can have sex with a prepubescent girl. Why should I show the slightest bit of respect to this book? There's only one reason. If I'm really trying to, not hurt the feelings of Muslims. Well, what if Muslims are going after our wives and threatening to kill people and so on? Well, guess what? Now it's just game on, right? Now it's just game on, and I'm not playing with you guys anymore. Any line you cross, I'm just going after your book. And as stupid as it sounds to do something like this, because it really does, right? I mean, it would never occur to atheists, Christians, and so on. Hey, we're having this argument and this discussion. We have this disagreement. Well, let's start. I'm going to get a copy of the God Delusion and drill a hole in it. That'll teach you. That we would regard that as stupid. But in Islam, they basically worship this book. They won't say it, but they do, right? They have this kind of worship of their book and their prophet, so that when you go after them, they just can't take it. Islam is worse at taking criticism than any other ideology in history. And that's why when these guys started going down this road out of a sense of desperation, once they started saying, hey, we're going to adopt all these alternative methods to silence people. Once they started doing that, I warned them. I said, guys, you can't take criticism. And I'm a world champion at making fun of your stuff. So I'd be very careful going down this road. They didn't listen. The second I just tore a page out of the Koran, chewed it up, and spit it out, that second they stopped. They stopped with the attacks on women and so on. They stopped going after family members and so on instantly. That's how quick it was. And so now we're in a situation where I'm demanding more than that. I'm saying, oh, now you also have to apologize to all the women that you attacked. You have to take down any tweets mentioning any of these women that you attack. So not just stop it. You also have to go back, do some work, take down all this stuff, completely renounce these ways, and apologize to all these women. They're a little too prideful. They're a little too proud to do that so far. So that's what's actually going on. But at the end of the day, I'm going to make them do that, right? They're going to do all of that. And so you're dealing with people with pride and arrogance the size of mountains. And so it's going to take a little time, but my goodness, I mean, it was an instant cessation of these kinds of hostilities, just with, okay, take one little passage, chew it up and spit it out. Then they started flipping out on me, but okay, let's leave the women out of it. And that was fine. That was the idea. But Yeah, you want this to stick in their minds, right? You want them to remember this because they are getting desperate. They're going to get more and more desperate. Next year, they're going to be even more desperate when even more people are leaving Islam and even more people are criticizing Islam. And so you don't ever want them to come back to this. I'm fine with most of the stuff the apologists are doing, but there are certain lines you don't cross. And I mean, you can do it as long as you're willing to accept the consequences. Point is, according to their religion, they're not supposed to be they're not supposed to be willing to take these consequences. If they want to insult, and I say, well, I'm going to insult your book, they're supposed to say, okay, then we're not going to do that. So anyway, that's the situation.
So how does being a psychopath, then, David, play to your favor in this? I mean, we talk about psychopathy and not experiencing feelings of guilt. Does this also play a role in the fear department for you? I mean, can you feel fear? Because I think a lot of people, would look at you and just seem like you seem completely fearless about things. Like, do you even understand what the emotion of fear is? And does that kind of play in your favor in this? Because when you've been given a death threat, I mean, I've seen video of you, you'll go out to the corner and tell the people where to find you and just basically invite them out. And there is a little bit of that seems psychotic, right? So talk about the role of fear in the life of a psychopath.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, you do have concerns. I mean, you do try to avoid getting caught if you're in trouble or something like that. But there is this kind of reversal in that, I don't know, you just like dangerous situations. You're kind of bored without dangerous situations and so on. And it's kind of difficult to describe, but it's like it's all amusing. In other words, when someone says, "Oh, if you don't stop, I'll kill you," it's like, you're so funny. You're so funny that you think that is a means of controlling me, right? Because basically, psychopaths are some of the best manipulators in the world. So you just grow up learning to manipulate other people because you're always kind of studying them and learning to imitate their emotional reactions and so on. But in doing so, you learn to manipulate their emotional reactions. And so you become manipulators. And then you become a Christian, you say, well, I'm not going to do that anymore, but you can still see when other people are doing it, right? So you can see when other people are manipulating. And Islam has all of these. Islam at its very core is an ideology of control and manipulation, forcing people to do what Muhammad said. And it has a variety of ways. It can just be straightforward physical threats, but if it doesn't have threats, it can be just basic. It's all just basic low-level manipulation, right? It's if you do what we say, then we shower you with praise. If you don't do what we say, we shower you with abuse and so on. So it's all things like that. But this is why I said that everything these guys are doing, it's all the same goal. They just have different ways of trying to achieve the same goal, whether it's through threats of violence, whether it's through doxing, whether it's through going after family members, whatever it is. It's all with the goal of controlling you. Well, psychopaths don't like being manipulated, right? And so when you tell a psychopath, "Hey, I'm going to make you do this," then it's like, I can guarantee you I'm not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
There is no scenario. And once I find out what you're trying to do, and I know that you're trying to control my behavior, there's no scenario where I'm going to do what you're saying that I should do. And so that's what I mean, that it ends up just being kind of adorable and amusing that, oh, we're going to threaten you. Oh, we're going to insult you. Oh, we're going to make fun of you, and we're going to keep doing this until you do what we want. And it's like, serious, guys, this is all hilarious. And, at the end of the day, what's the most you can do to me? Saw my head off? I'm gonna die one day. I'm gonna die one day anyway. It seems like a cool way to go. So, look. I'm gonna tell you, Bobby. It's always in my head. Man, I got these 1,000 and some change videos. one of these guys actually saws my head off, it's really going to boost interest in my videos. And then my channel, after my head gets sawn off, is just going to go through the roof and expose this stuff even more. And so,
yeah, and it would. I mean, if somebody went about doing that, all it would do is just help leverage it. I've heard you say before too, things like, I'll just get a life insurance plan out and donate it all to expanding, apologetic ministries that are exposing Islam, if anybody wants to do anything to me. So you definitely are antagonistic in that way, but also you're just trying to make sure that you do everything you can do to expose the beliefs of Islam. You mentioned, David, that there is an avalanche of apostasy that's taking place. I know after 9/11, we saw kind of this burgeoning growth of Islam. And that was kind of confusing, threw a curveball at many. Mm-hmm. And now here we are nearly 2 decades later. And with the rise of YouTube and your channel and others, it seems as if people are waking up to what it is that they really believe in. They're walking out of Islam. I mean, I'm even seeing some of the feed of ex-Muslims who are on this channel conversation right now. I saw a video you put out last week reading of just countless people who have come out of Islam. Is there any statistical data that you are familiar with that has been done in the last 3, 4, 5 years that have shown that this is what indeed is happening? I mean, you've mentioned that there are Muslim apologists talking about this. Has there been any research? Because all we were hearing about for so long here in America is how, it's the fastest growing religion now in the United States and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but multiple things going on with what you just said. It was confusing to lots of people. Why is it that after you have some large-scale terrorist attack, tons of people slaughtered in the name of Allah, you suddenly get a bunch of people converting to Islam? I mean, what in the world is going on there? Well, if you think about what would happen, because as I mentioned earlier, Islam has done an amazing job actually controlling a massive portion of the non-Muslim population in non-Muslim nations, controlling what the media is willing to say, controlling what politicians are willing to say, compelling everyone to think of any sort of criticism of Islam as somehow racist in nature, right? Like if you say, hey, I disagree with Islam's killing of apostates. Oh, you're only saying that because you're a racist against brown Muslims, right? So they've done an amazing job of that. Well, because politicians and the media and so on ended up like that, well, what happens after every single terrorist attack? What happened after 9/11? What happened after the 7/7 bombings? What happened after all of this? Well, every time there was a terrorist attack, the politicians and journalists would parade a bunch of peaceful Muslims on television and at speaking events to share the true version of Islam, the peaceful, wonderful, pure monotheistic worship of the one true God that respects Jesus and loves Mary, right? So basically, the more terrorist attacks we had, the more free publicity and the more time spots Muslim apologists and Muslim evangelists had, right? So all people would hear it, there's a terrorist attack, and let's turn the news on. Oh, look, Muslim preachers and everyone else telling us that no, the real Islam is peaceful and wonderful, and man, it sounds like the greatest thing in the world. And some people convert based on that nonsense. So you had a lot of people converting and so on, but you had some interesting statistics even back then. So even in like 2006, 2007, 2008, and so on, even back then, it was a known statistic and I got this from Muslims. I got this from Muslims who were warning other Muslims, just like Muslims now are warning about the avalanche of apostasy. Even back then, they were pointing out it's a statistic that of people who convert to Islam, more than half, and this was specifically in the United States, that of the people who convert to Islam, more than half of those people will leave Islam within 2 years. And so the message was, hey, we're celebrating all these conversions, but keep in mind that over half these people are going to be out of Islam in 2 years. Not to mention 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, and so on down the road. So that was even.
And how do you really even know in some like Saudi Arabia or some of these countries where they do the statistics say, 98% of the country is Muslim? I mean, can you even put that you're not a Muslim? So can we really assume that those percentages are in actuality true when there is a possibility that some of these people would love to walk away from it, but they can't?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is difficult to get reliable statistics in a lot of places. I mean, if you did just a door-to-door poll in Pakistan asking people if they're Muslims, well, it's kind of difficult if someone's an undercover atheist for them to give you an accurate answer. But studies, even with that said, studies have shown Islam is crumbling in a lot of places. Islam is crumbling in Iran. Even before the rise of ISIS, Islam was crumbling among the younger generation in Iraq. So this before ISIS. They really got a taste of it with ISIS. But Islam was crumbling, meaning that the younger generation had contempt for Islam. They viewed it as a source of just endless problems for society. Then they got ISIS. You can imagine what the younger generation thinks about it now. So here's what you have. We talk about Islam being the fastest growing religion and so on. In the United States, the number of people who are converting to Islam is balanced out by the number of people who are leaving Islam. So there's no growth of Islam from conversions in the United States. You do have some growth from birth rates and from immigration. So, and that's the real cause of the growth of Islam in the world. The same Pew Research study that Muslims point to say, you see, this research study said that Islam is the fastest growing religion. That research study said why Islam is the fastest growing religion. Muslims have the highest birth rates. If you start investigating why Muslims have the highest birth rates, whether you're talking about Europe, whether you're talking about the Middle East, whether you're talking about Africa, whether you're talking about Asia, wherever you have a sizable number of Muslims, they have higher birth rates than anyone else. Mm-hmm. Once you start looking into why do Muslims have the highest birth rates, you start examining this and trying to figure it out. Well, you find out that because of Islam's impact on women in lots of places, not in all, and there are places in the Muslim world where women go away to college and so on, but there are also lots of places where that's strongly discouraged. Places like Afghanistan, where they'll shoot you or blow you up if you're a girl and you're trying to go to school. And so what you have is the role of a girl in society is for her to get married off at a young age and immediately begin producing babies. And so if you imagine a young woman in the West, so she's a girl, she goes to school, she graduates high school, maybe she goes off and starts working then, or she might go on to college. If she goes to college, she's out of college at 22, then she's starting her career, then maybe she gets married a couple years after that. She has her first kid and she's like 25, 27, 28, somewhere in there, and she's having her first kid. Well, in Yemen, the girl was married off when she's 9 or 10, and she's had her first kid by the time she's 13. And by the time she's 25 or 27 or 28, she's on baby number 6 or 7 or 8. And so if that's the impact your ideology or religion has on society, well, guess what? You're just going to get massively higher birth rates than everyone else. And once you have these massively higher birth rates, then you become, as long as most of those children are staying Muslim, they're staying Muslim, they still consider themselves Muslims. Well, guess what? You get the fastest growing religion in the world, and you get to proclaim that as a miracle that proves that your religion is true. So that's how that has worked out so far. But now we're getting to a point where the young generation, many of them, are learning to have utter contempt for Islam. They're leaving Islam. And so what happens? What happens when we get to a point where the number of people who are leaving Islam, whether they become Christians or whether they become atheists, whatever they do, what happens when we get to a point where the number of young people leaving Islam overshadows the number of young people who are being born as Muslims? In other words, once that growth rate, once that Islam is the fastest growing religion because of high birth rates, once that's balanced out by young people leaving Islam, what happens? Well, you get this again. It's This isn't us calling it an avalanche of apostasy. This is Muslim apologists who are looking down the road. They're saying, look at all these apostates now. This is snowballing. 10 years ago, we had hardly any. Now we're having tons, and it's getting worse because back then we only had a few apologists dealing with Islam. Now we've got endless apologists dealing with Islam on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. They're everywhere. What are we going to do? How are we going to stop this? We're getting blasted from every side. They understand that the number of people leaving Islam is soon going to, again, overshadow the number of Muslims who are being born to Muslim parents. And that's when Islam is just simply in free fall. And so
David, I've
interesting
got
times.
Yeah, it is interesting times, and I appreciate your analysis there. I've got 2 questions that I'd love to ask you in our remaining time. We've got a lot going on the comment board, and it's just going to be hard to really get into some of the Q&A. I know we've got you for about another 5 to 10 minutes here. So the 2 questions that I would have for you is, let's just kind of say you're on the 1 Minute Apologist, so keep it brief. But if you had to, if there's some Muslims that are on the channel right now, and you had to answer this question, why should Muslims leave Islam and become Christians? What would you say?
Because Muhammad's a false prophet and Jesus is Lord. And Muslims who think it's silly to think that Muhammad is a false prophet, guys, just take any reasons. Just pause right now and think, why do I believe in Islam? What reasons have I been given to believe in Islam? Just take a little bit of time to research those reasons and see if they really stand up to scrutiny. They don't. They fall apart at the slightest examination, at the slightest bit of scrutiny. All these things you're told, the Quran's been perfectly preserved, the Quran's filled with scientific miracles, all these things. If you would spend 5 minutes seriously examining that, you'd find out this is complete nonsense. And that's every single Muslim argument you can look at. They all fall apart under scrutiny. Well, guess what? Jesus rose from the dead. And you can reject that. You can say, I don't believe in the supernatural or something like that. But the more you examine it, the more you find out the evidence is there. Everything we know from history tells us Jesus died by crucifixion. It was a public event. He was crucified by the Roman Empire. We know that. That's a historical fact. We also know that he appeared to his followers later. We know that. We know that they went to their bloody deaths claiming that they had witnessed a man risen from the dead and appearing to them. So if we know anything about, again, you could say, well, I just don't believe in miracles or something like that. But if we believe in the eyewitness testimony of people who are laying down their lives for their claims, and not just one person, but an entire group of people who all saw the same thing. If you're open to the supernatural, great. Christianity has the best case for a miracle ever. And so if you want to believe in something about, if you want to listen to someone tell you about God, I would listen to the one who rose from the dead. And so that's why you should leave Islam and become a Christian.
And then my last question, David, would be for those that are Christians, they might not be comfortable with your methods, and they might think, wow, if, reaching Muslims means that I got to become the artist and start doing origami art. That kind of could create some extra fear in people. What kind of advice would you say to the church, to Christians, on ways to start reaching out to Muslims? What are they going to need to know to become more evangelistically engaged in that endeavor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be clear, I wouldn't encourage the vast majority of people to do what I do. I view myself as doing the crap work that someone needs to do, but most people don't, should avoid. And so as far as Christians getting involved, it's actually very simple. I encourage people to take a sort of Greg Koukl type approach, learning to ask questions, learning to ask Muslims questions about what they believe, learning to ask them questions about why they believe. And then once a Muslim friend or co-worker tells you why he believes this or that, then say, hey, could we get together and actually look into that and see if you're actually right about this, and then studying that issue. So the point here is that lots of Christians think, oh, I don't want to get involved with Islam because it just seems like so much to know, and Muslims are going to have so many objections and so on. it's just false. If you take this kind of approach where focusing on one person at a time or two people at a time and their specific arguments, their specific reasons, well, that's all you have to investigate. But as you keep doing this, you're going to find out Muslims tend to have most of the same objections and arguments over and over and over again. So once you've talked to one Muslim, you're pretty well prepared for the next. And after you've talked to 10 Muslims, you're pretty well prepared for anything that's going to happen. I would encourage people to learn to respond to Muslim arguments, just because there are Christians who think, nope, we preach the gospel, but we do not criticize opposing positions. Almost the vast majority of ex-Muslims I've heard from, and I've heard from a ton, I hear from lots every single month. The vast majority of Muslims who've left Islam that I have encountered only left Islam. This is including Nabil Qureshi and many others who are popular. Only seriously considered alternatives to Islam after their confidence in Islam was shaken by learning, by having their arguments exposed and criticized. And so when you tell me, oh, nope, we don't criticize Islam, you're basically saying we're going to let the Muslim apologists get away with lying to all these people, filling their heads with complete nonsense, and we're not going to expose the lies. I don't know what you think Christian means, but if you think Christian means not exposing lies, I think you got a problem here. So yeah, I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to be bold, be fearless, not to be worried that someone's going to chop your head off. If I'm not getting my head chopped off, then you're certainly not going to get your head chopped off. And as for the people like me who have to sometimes take things in a different direction, just understand at the end of the day, sometimes it's good to have a psycho on your side.
Oh, David, man. Hey, I'll tell you, it also takes patience. And that's one of the things that you modeled with Nabil. I mean, what was it, like 4 years before Nabil ended up giving his life to Christ?
Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, that took a lot of patience.
And I'll go ahead and add, Bobby, there were Christians during that time saying, look, you're wasting your time, because a lot of Christian evangelism in the West has been sort of geared towards this. We've absorbed a kind of Billy Graham crusade mindset with evangelism, right? You get up, you preach, a bunch of people come forward. If they don't, well, that's on them. And the reason that was such a successful method of evangelism was, well, there were lots of people who were already prepared. They already believed in God. They already believed in the Bible. They already believed in Jesus. They just never made any sort of commitment. So you call them, hey, you state the gospel clearly to make sure they understand it. And then what are you waiting for? And lots of people would convert. Well, now you got people who don't believe in God, or they believe in completely different things about God. If you're talking about Muslims, you're talking about people who believe the exact opposite of basic Christian doctrines, right? So they believe it would be horrible for God to be a Trinity, or they believe, God to be a Trinity, or Jesus to be Lord, or it would be immoral for Jesus to take the punishment for sins upon himself. They believe the opposites of Christian doctrine. And so these things are going to take some time. These things are going to take some time. And so if you have, this mindset of, hey, I'm going to go preach the gospel to this Muslim and so on, and it can happen, right? You can have people who convert very rapidly and so on. But basically for a Muslim even to understand what you're saying with the gospel, or let alone to think that it's true, that normally takes a lot of serious reflection on his part. And that only comes by spending a long time. And you're talking about, it could be years. And by the way, the statistic on that back in, the 2005, 2006, the statistic was that among Muslims who convert to Christianity, it took on average 7 years from the time the gospel was presented to them before they actually converted. So you're talking 7 years. So we talk about 4 years with Nabil. That's actually on the quick side of things. So you got to be ready for this. Got to be in it for the long haul. But it's worth it. So and all the Christians who are saying, David, you're spending so much time talking to this one guy over a period of years. You could be talking to so many people who are more open. Look, this guy's so close-minded. You're spending all this time on him. Well, guess what? Muslims make really cool Christians. So seems like it's worth it.
Yeah, Nabil went on to be used greatly by the Lord to reach a ton of people. As we wrap up, I saw a comment come through. It said, well, there's been a lot of Christian apologists in the last 10 years, and their work's been emerging and it's been growing, yet there's still a lot of apostasy in the church. And I just felt led to react to that a little bit and go, point taken. I would say many of the people, though, that are walking away perhaps into progressive Christianity or into a new atheism are people who did not grow up with the foundation of apologetics. So while apologetics is growing, I think that we have a lot of work to be done in getting apologetics into the local church, getting pastors to believe that apologetics is important. So while a lot of apologists and philosophers are doing this work online, writing books, I'm not sure how much it's infiltrated its way into the local church. We have a lot more work to do to get it into the church so that people aren't becoming Christian apostates as well. But I would say those that grow up with a good Christian worldview, that are able to interact with things, they're not grown up in an overly legalistic home where they have a loving picture of God who is gracious, yet who does forgive us of our sins. Those people are going to have a much better chance of walking and living for the Lord. Well, our guest today has been the great artist, David Wood. And I'm just so thankful to have you on today, buddy. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Make sure that if you're some of my subscribers that are on the channel, that you go over and subscribe at Acts 17 Apologetics. And if you've come over from Acts 17 Apologetics, be sure to subscribe, like, and share our channel at 1 Minute Apologist as well. We've got a video coming out this week where David Wood answered on 1 Minute Apologist the question, are there any similarities between radical Islam and Black Lives Matters? And I think that you'll want to see this video. He brought out some very insightful points, and we will release that this week as well for you to be aware of. So again, David, thank you for your time. Tim Hull, I bring you in. Is there anything for wrap-up purposes that we need to be aware of? Oh, I would say my wife and I do a lot of stuff on mental health this Thursday at 5:15. Heather and I will be doing for ADD Awareness Month. We'll be talking about, understanding and overcoming some of the trappings of the ADD lifestyle. 3 of the 4 of us in our home got ADD. So if you want to know how to deal with ADD issues and how to parent kids that might have ADD, join Heather and I. We take that on believing that the church truly needs an apologetic for mental health issues. The church has dropped the ball big time as it relates to discerning the difference between a moral issue and a mental health issue. And so we're here hopefully to be a resource and to help. Tim, any final thoughts?
1 second.
David?
Speaking of moral and mental health, whatever weird issues you guys have that makes you from completely different parts of the country get the exact same haircut, you need to deal with that. And I suggest therapy, but go ahead.
Always a good word.
Says the dude who's sitting with a red beret on his head, right?
If you're not artists, you're not artists. You got no excuse.
Oh man, David. What's up, Tim?
No, thank you so much, David, for being here. It was awesome. I was reading the chat the good portion of the time. It was very lively as always. And we'll end with a reminder of our Apologetics crash course that's available. And we'll see everybody next time.
For sure. Peace out, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Apologetics helps us to feel more equipped and confident in doing evangelism. Look, if I could take a few hours with you to help you to feel confident in sharing the gospel and defending the truth of Christianity, what would I want to say? If I could just distill what I would want to say to the local church on why it is that we can be confident in presenting Christianity, well, this is it. It's a crash course.